name's Aleta Davis, and I am the president of Preservation Trust of Wicomico County. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in for today's episode of This Moment in History with Preservation Trust. Today, we have two really special guests. First of all, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Buffalo Soldiers. I think most of us remember that from history to some extent. But I will bet you didn't know we had one living here right on the Eastern Shore. So my guest today is Deborah Scott. She is actually the granddaughter of a Buffalo soldier. And her assistant and friend, Dr. Mason. So we should have a really nice talk today and all learn some interesting things about the Buffalo Soldiers. And originally, Deborah and I think your sister, did she come to meet Dr. Thompson?
Yes.
The two of the Scott sisters came to talk to Dr. Ray Thompson, who is also a former chairman of the Preservation Trust of Wicomico. And Ray came to the meeting and he said, I want to talk to you about something that I found out about today from Deborah Scott. And he said, she's got a project she'd like to start on about the Buffalo Soldiers. And I remembered your sister saying something about they were related or descended from a Buffalo soldier. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let Deborah tell us about her project and why it was so important for us, especially all of us here on the Eastern Shore, to know about this history. It's hidden history, and we love those little things, you know, we just pull them right out, and all of a sudden you've got this big, beautiful project and subject you knew nothing about. So Deborah, tell us how this all got started.
The idea for our project came from one of my siblings who had majored in history at SU. Dr. Ray was one of her professors. And I had recently retired and was all set to just travel and write.
Relax.
And so the idea was presented, and I began to think about it, and I thought, well, maybe that would be something worthwhile considering. That way we could do something with the old dwelling.
So there was actually a house.
There is an old dwelling. It's not the original, so it's not the one that my grandfather built, but the current old dwelling was built in its place because the original building was lost to fire. So the idea of the project started as just an idea with a small group of people. And as things evolved, we continued working and calling ourselves an exploratory committee. And we were looking at, would it be feasible to do such a project? How would we pay for it? Things like that. And then it evolved into a bona fide committee. And I sort of, by default, became the person in charge.
Has to be one.
It was not my choice initially, but in any event, I've kind of embraced it now.
Well, the problem, of course, was being able to obtain money for your project, which is never easy.
Never easy. So what you have to spend a lot of time researching different grant options if you don't have deep pockets, which we did not. But you have to be really clear about your mission, because when you're going to apply for grants, they have guidelines you have to follow. Your mission has to be in line with the mission of the funding agency.
Exactly.
And because, if you submit an application and your mission doesn't quite mesh with that of the funder, the reviewers call that kind of creeping.
Yes.
Toward their money. So you have to be really careful about the funds that you apply for. So my maternal grandfather served as a Buffalo soldier in the 9th Cavalry in the Western Territories in the late 1800s. He served his first 5 years from 1882 to 1887, came back to Wicomico County, which it was Wicomico County by then. It was no longer all Somerset.
Right.
and stayed home for a couple of months and then decided to re-enlist. So we re-enlisted for another 5 years. That was the term of contracts at that time, 5 years. And the rest is history, as they say.
Well, the interesting, the sad part of this, which it could have been, is so many important historic places are lost to history because people like you know about them, but you can't obtain money. And what we had realized in looking for grants with Preservation Trust of Wicomico is that we could act as a fiduciary for another group of concerned citizens who didn't want a property to be lost. And that's exactly what happened while Deborah was doing all of the, oh my goodness, the work. It's just like 24 hours a day plus, and you're always emailing and writing and calling people. And then the grant process is not easy. But she was actually able to go under Preservation Trust of Wicomico to obtain her first grants until she obtained, 3 years later, your nonprofit? Was it about 3 years?
Well, last year, 2023, yeah, roughly 2.5, 3 years. We were an LLC initially, and in Maryland, in order to become a 501c3, you have to dissolve your LLC and then apply for your 501c3. I won't further comment on that.
Yes.
Anyhow,
and the hardest part,
had to do.
It's hard to find enough board members and good board members also when you do something like that. Because a lot of people want to be in a board, but they don't realize it's usually a working board. And you're not just a figurehead. Everybody needs to have a part in it, and then to find a good treasurer. And wow,
yeah, it's a lot. And
Yes.
If you're not if you're a corporation, then your board members are expected to be paid most of the time, not necessarily all the time. But other than that, board members are generally working members.
Yes, they're volunteers, but it's still
Right,
working.
they have their own lives, and you have to plead and work until you find a good group. And right now we are a small group.
That's good.
We have a big mission. The company is very fortunate to have Dr. Mason here as our assistant director, and Lauren Roberts is a board member, and Sierra Gardner is a full-time student.
Wonderful.
And so we do our best. We do the best we can do.
Now, Dr. Mason, are you from this area?
Yes, I am. I went to Salisbury High. Yeah, I graduated from there in 1963.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm encouraged by what Deborah's trying to do.
Yes.
And trying to network with other organizations so we can get more involved and let people know what's going on in Allen.
Yes.
And hopefully expand our membership to the board.
Well, this is very exciting to me because you have a chance to save your historic site or your historic building. If you ever have a question, please contact us at Preservation Trust of Wicomico, and we'll do our best to help you. We don't want to lose any more historic places in Salisbury than we can help. And sometimes we find out about these places too late. But Deborah, tell us, now, as a child, your grandfather was already gone then, wasn't he?
He was already gone.
Yes.
My grandfather was married twice. And so several people, when I tell them that my grandfather was a Buffalo Soldier, they look at me as though I should be like 80 years old. I said, no, he was a senior citizen when he married for the second time. And then my mom was the first child from that second marriage.
Oh.
And then my parents were married for 16 years before they had any kids.
Wow.
But my sisters and I grew up hearing about Buffalo Soldiers because of my mother and her youngest brother. And as a child, I thought, what is a Buffalo Soldier? I mean, just the name sounded so strange. And I was, very much into the news even as a child and reading magazines and books and watching television. I had never heard about Buffalo Soldiers other than when my mother and uncle mentioned it. And my uncle told, but to his discredit, he told a lot of tall tales.
Oh, well, that goes along.
He's making this up, telling me this because I'm a child. But as it turned out, it's all true.
And there aren't many Buffalo Soldiers in this part of the country, are there?
Well, we've been working on this project since 2021. And we've been in the news, print and broadcast, and nobody else has come forward to say that they've had an ancestor who was a Buffalo Soldier.
Wow.
Now, when you go west of the Mississippi, that's a totally different story. Totally different landscape, totally different ball game. And last year I was invited as a VIP descendant during July for Buffalo Soldier History Day. And the number of people that you meet once you're west of the Mississippi who know Buffalo Soldier history, who had ancestors who were Buffalo Soldiers, it's like you really are in a different part of the country.
Yes.
It's a very different scene.
Now, this made it extra hard for Deborah because thank goodness we have email, but still, it's hard because when you're doing a grant, you need to be right on top of it. They want the answer right now. So she would be emailing. You live in Baltimore?
No, I live in Hartford County.
Hartford County. So, she can't just run back and forth here every time there was, if there's a problem with the project or whatever. So that's giving it another layer of problems when you're trying to work on something like this and get your answers through in a timely way and get your materials picked up and meet people down here that are working on the project. And it's a little hard down here sometimes to find a contractor that can do what needs to be done. And wow.
I put far more miles on my car in a year than I should have, but I don't know that that's going to relax any at all. But we have obtained an architect, so that was a major milestone.
That's exciting.
I feel really, really glad about that. Really glad about that. And this man has 40-some years experience. And I just can't wait to start working with him. He's going to be one of the people I'm going to email when I leave this session, because I was up to midnight sending out RFPs for a demolition contractor. I now need to let him know that this is where we are. So I'm hoping that the 1st of June, early June, we will demolish the old dwelling. And then shortly thereafterwards have the GPR done and get a contractor in there and start building.
Now, the GPR that Deborah's talking about is when they look through the ground, basically, with this equipment.
Right. It's ground penetrating radar. It's technology that's being used by a lot of building projects.
And one of the first things you want to do on a historic site is to do your archaeology, because there could be all kinds of clues to the history of the people that lived there that were thrown out. It was trash then. Today it's a treasure. Broken pottery, belt buckles, bullets, coins, all kinds of things that you might find. And your new building, it's going to be a small museum type place?
It is going to be a small museum. When I first approached Wicomico County Zoning and Planning back in 2021 and told them our plans, and I was very clear, this is going to be a living history site. Mm-hmm. And then as I sat there talking with Mr. Meadows, and he said, well, based upon what you say you're going to do, this is going to be a museum. Mm-hmm. So I said, fine, it'll be a museum.
And that's very exciting.
And as it turns out, that was the better description to utilize, because when I applied for the 501c3, they want to know what exactly your project's going to be exporting or putting out. And museum and education were two of the things that I checked off. And so because when you apply for a 501c3 status, I don't know about any other state, but in Maryland, it does not necessarily mean you're going to be approved.
Right.
So I had to be very careful about how I filled that out.
Yes.
And so, yes, it's going to be a museum.
And I also want to mention that I believe this is the first time you had tried to get grants, wasn't it? since when you decided to do this project. So don't say that I've never done this, I can't do it, and I say it all the time, basically because it gives me a headache being on the computer. But it can be a difficult process. And how many grants, Deborah, have you managed to obtain over this short period of time? Just about 3 years. 5 grants, and major grants. Some of them.
The first 3 were small grants from Chesapeake Bay Trust, and I always want to mention
Grateful to them.
Because they provided the funding for us to begin with Hattie's Trail. So Hattie's Trail has been open to the public as of the 15th of January this year.
And it's lovely.
But it is a work in progress. We're continuing to work with it as we get more funds, and we've advertised it that way. It's open, but we are planning to continue enhancement.
And you have a sign there now.
We do
that's
have a
been
sign.
put up.
Yes.
And tell us what Hattie's Trail is. Why is it called Hattie's Trail?
Hattie was my maternal grandmother. She was Thomas's widow.
And she was your mother, the second wife.
Yes.
Is that correct?
She was the second wife. Her name was Harriet. She was from Baltimore City. And from what I gathered from a couple of people who knew people who knew her, she was a quiet woman, kind of reserved, and didn't bother with people too much. So I kind of say I take after her.
Yes. Yes, and this is she has said she wants to be in the background and look at everything you've done to bring this project. You've been like the leader of this whole thing. And it's so hard when you're trying to obtain grants and preserve historic places. It's very expensive, and it's hard not to give up, especially when you'd rather be going to the beach or something. But she has really persevered, and to get the number of grants and this much done in this time, I think is incredible.
Well, while I have written the grants myself, there have been people like the current board members and a couple of previous people who had to back away because of other commitments. Mm-hmm. And without their help, and without the help of the funders, we would not be at the stage where we are now.
Right.
So you can't do it alone. You have to have people to help.
You do need help, and you shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. I mean, unless it's changed, from what I recall, Wicomico County is underserved by grants, not because they're not there, but people don't apply for them. So there is often money available, but you just have to follow everything perfectly on the grant.
It takes a high level of commitment to doing the research.
Yes.
Because the monies are out there, but they're not just going to jump out and find you.
No.
But the other point I want to drive home for anybody who may watch this, if you're looking for funds that are earmarked for minority projects or for projects being built in underserved areas, when you see that the monies are available, hop on it then.
Yes, exactly.
Because we're living in a time in this country where projects for minorities or for Black history are being attacked. And there's a segment of our population that wants to rewrite history.
Of course.
We are not rewriting history with this project. We are not embellishing, making it up, just telling the facts. Buffalo Soldiers were real. My grandfather was real. He lived at that site, so it's all factual. And I really want to drive that point home.
And what tell everybody about the uniform you're wearing as well.
Well, when I do presentations, I switch it up a bit. Today I have on, these are called gauntlets. And they were sometimes white in color as opposed to yellow. And this is an officer's shield shirt. So this would not have been something that a private or a sergeant would have worn. It would have been an officer, okay? And then my boots and my pants. The pants are dark blue with a gold stripe down the side. And that was pretty much the colors that the Buffalo Soldiers utilized, was blue and gold. A shade of blue and a shade of gold.
Did the average soldier like your grandfather, did they just have like a shirt and a pair of pants? Just a dark, maybe blue, or maybe their own clothes even?
No. They were provided with uniforms, with clothing. And let me explain that. My grandfather was enlisted in the U.S. Regular Army. Okay? In 1866, our government established a piece of legislation that allowed for the establishment of 6 all-black regiments. Right? That eventually got dwindled down to 4, then 2, with the 2 being the 9th and 10th Cavalry. Those soldiers were different from the United States colored troops who served during the Civil War.
Right.
They were not enlisted in the Army. They were not paid. They were volunteers, like in the movie Glory.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So it's always important to differentiate between United States colored troops and Buffalo Soldiers. Now, when my grandfather enlisted, he didn't sign a piece of paper that said, okay, now I'm a Buffalo Soldier.
No.
No. He enlisted. They eventually got that nickname.
Right.
However, some of the men who had served as United States colored troops, when that legislation hit in 1866, some of them did enlist.
They thought it was something that they would
because
want to do because it was
They
going to be
didn't
all
have much to go back to. Sharecropping, farm labor,
Right.
whatever. But I always make that distinction because people think, oh, it was just, they were all the same. No.
No, it was a
And
specific.
to answer your question, no, my grandfather served at a time when the the Army provided uniform. So whatever they provided is what they had, from hat to boots.
Now, the on your site, you mentioned Hattie's Trail. That is the first part of your project.
Yes.
And that's just a beautiful little area, sort of a meditation type area to walk through.
We hope, yeah.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. And you've just finished last year putting some gorgeous plants and things that were used for medicinal purposes and other, they weren't just planted to be pretty. People used them in their homes, like in their kitchen gardens.
Some of them, yes.
Yes, and I believe they're all native to this area, or at the time.
Many of them are native. Sometimes, you can't necessarily find native plants year round that you could put out in a site like that. So as many native as we could put out, we did. And so as a matter of fact, I'll be going back there later today based on some work that was done there yesterday to fill in a couple of pots where the plants that were there have bitten the dust, so they need to be replaced.
Well, it's, of course, by the time this is aired, this will be over, but you're having one of your get-togethers and fundraisers tomorrow at Allen, right on the site.
Yes, tomorrow. It was not originally designed as a fundraiser, but it's evolved into one.
Yes, anytime anybody'd like to make a donation for a project, it's not turned down.
Right. So there will be a donation box, but some of our board members, came up with the title Buffalo Soldier Jam. So that's what it's called. And we're going to have a DJ and some members of one of the Divine Nine. I know people watching that know what that means, but in this particular case, and for tomorrow, it's some members of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I don't know which chapter. Do you know which chapter, Dr. Mason?
No, I don't.
Okay. But anyhow, they're going to be grilling whatever.
Okay, whatever.
And
I love that.
a motorcycle group from Worcester County, and maybe another one from Delaware. And the reason why all that partnering is good is because that looks good on a grant application.
It does. That's community involvement.
Community involvement and outreach. And people don't know how much leverage that adds to your application.
Yes, and that's the thing. Also, if you hear about another Buffalo Soldiers event and you go, every person is kind of counted towards the groups of people who have come to be involved and enjoy and participate in this. And without community support, a lot of grants fall through. So this is quite helpful.
Yeah, there's generally, I haven't written a federal grant yet. Those are a particular bear. But certainly with the state grants, there are always 3 or more questions about community involvement, your outreach, partnering, all of that. And so we've been fortunate. Our company, which is the Buffalo Soldier Living History Site Company, we've been fortunate to have some good partners. And so we will always be indebted and always credit them. Some are listed on the sign that's posted for Hattie's Trail. And as time goes on and we have other publications or what have you, we will always credit the organizations and individuals who have helped us.
Now, on that note, people that want to help or would be interested, you have a new website set up, don't you, for this?
We do. We can thank one of our board members for that. No, I'm sorry, that's our full-time student. But I think she has worked, Lauren and Sierra have worked on that together, I do believe, for our Facebook page as well as our website.
Well, that's exciting to have your website and your Facebook page. And if somebody would want to reach out to you who might be interested in helping with your project, being a volunteer, or maybe perhaps a board member, how would you like them to reach you?
We have an email address. It's polk, P-O-L-K, outpost @gmail.com.
Okay.
And they can send an email and explain their interests and what they think they might bring to the table. We are always looking for additional board members because it will help lighten the load.
It does.
When you just have a few people.
Because everybody works.
Right. And, spread the responsibilities out. So we're always looking for some good people.
Now, Dr. Jeffrey or Dr. Mason, are you planning on being at the new outpost, the new museum when that is built?
Yes, I'm planning on supporting because locally, if you look at Wicomico County as far as Black history, there's not much prevalent information.
No, there isn't.
So whatever role I can play in enhancing this location, I'm trying to do my best.
Let's keep her.
I want to say this before we finish. And I use this in grant applications. Our site will be the first living history site east of the Mississippi with a focus on Buffalo Soldier history.
That's exciting.
And let me tell you, the different meetings I've been to on the shore and away, Wicomico County has the largest Black population of all the counties on the eastern shore. But where is a Black history location that's prominent, that stands out? If you go to Worcester County, they're on the ball. You go to Dorchester. I am now working with the Dorchester County Committee for their Juneteenth celebration.
Oh, nice.
Because I don't know of any such thing going on in Wicomico
Well,
County.
I'm hoping you'll have one in Allen for Juneteenth.
Well, we'll see.
Depends where you are and what you're
we
doing.
only have a handful of board members right now. So we'll
yes.
see what we can handle.
And that's why we need more people. I mean, even if you're interested in maybe going and checking to make sure Hattie's Trail is cleaned up, raking, sweeping, whatever. I know we have a couple board members, Ron and Kathy, they're wonderful. They have been down there. But it takes a small army. And with the new site, now tell everybody what you have planned to do with your second part of the project with where your grandfather's home was.
Well, the second phase would be to demolish the current structure. And then the third phase is the ultimate. Is the building of the new museum and the new pavilion. And we have a historic item on the property. We don't advertise what it is so much, but a cover is going to be built for that as well. That is something that my grandfather actually built.
Oh, wow. That's
And
nice.
so, but this property he started buying property in 1898 when he got out of the military. And that property has been in the family continuously all these years.
You never had to sell any of it. And didn't you tell me?
Oh, he sold one portion to, well, he didn't sell it. My mother sold a quarter of an acre to one of her nieces. And that's adjacent to us. But that was grandfather's property. So
And did he have what? Was it 25 acres that
he had close to 30, which is not a lot. In the greater scheme of
For
things.
that time, I think it was.
Well-
For the time he was alive, I think that was pretty incredible.
We'll see. He saved his money when he was in the service, because one of the letters he wrote from Fort Sill, he said to his parents, "I'm saving my money." And then when he got out, he was eligible for a pension. And so I believe he used some of that pension money in addition to what he saved.
That
when
was
he
very
serving.
small too. The pensions. I know my great grandfather was in the Civil War, and his when he died, the widow's benefit was $30 a month, and my great grandmother, had to apply for that. Of course, I'm sure they didn't want to give it to her, but he was wounded in action, so that was probably how she managed to keep getting the widow's benefits. But before we close, I would like to again remind people, we'll give your email again. And also, if you forget or something, you can't think of the email, you can always reach Preservation Trust of Wicomico on Facebook. And we're working on our webpage now, so the webpage is not in good shape. But you can always find us on Facebook, and then we will, of course, refer you to Deborah. So again, can you tell them your email address?
The email address is polk, P-O-L-K, outpost @gmail.com. But we have a website as well, which is www.polkoutpost.com. I don't have to memorize it because I just start to type in polk and it comes up automatically.
And also, if they research Buffalo Soldier in the Eastern Shore, it'll come up Snow Hill. That's how I found it.
Snow Hill?
Yeah, Allen, yeah.
And if you have not been to Allen, and I'm saying this because I've lived here 30-some years, and I'd only been to Allen, I think, one time until I was part of the Allen Historical Society, and it's just a beautiful area there. It's
Allen
oh my
was
goodness.
always a little sleepy hamlet, but geographically larger than Fruitland. But people didn't know about it.
No.
But when word got out, then people started buying up property along the Wicomico River, and
Yes.
there's a winery there now. I mean, I was stunned when I came back home one year and there was a winery. What? The winery, and there's some really large homes
There
in
are.
Allen.
There are.
There really
And
are.
I've seen some new homes in your area too, near the site.
I won't say this on camera, but anyhow.
There are a few, but anyway.
But we're going to have a really nice site. Again, I just want to say we are eternally grateful to everyone who has helped us along the way and who will continue to help us.
And that's what we all need as organizations, nonprofits. We always need interest and help from the community. If you haven't been to Allen and you have not been, tell them how to find your area in Allen.
If you are on Camden Avenue in Salisbury, go past Salisbury University's campus, you can take 13, but if you're on Camden Avenue,
That's the way
it's
I go.
a straight shot to Allen.
You'll see when you get down, there's a dance studio on the left, and there's a little.
If you're going through Fruitland.
Yes, on Camden Avenue, you'll see the sign that says Allen. You kind of veer to the right.
You eventually get to South Upper Ferry Road, which is just one section of Allen. It's called South Upper Ferry Road because the Wicomico River divides South Upper Ferry from Northern Upper Ferry Road. but the other approach is from 13 South. From 13 South, once you go through Fruitland, you will eventually come to a small sign at an intersection with a light, and you make a right, and it's Allen. And make that right and go down to the Allen cutoff and make a left and keep going.
It's just not far past the church, isn't it?
Which
Is it?
Yes.
Is it?
there is a Deliverance Church or something. Yeah, that's on the left. Yeah, you
Yes.
just keep going.
Yeah, it's not too far. So watch for the church and then kind of look on the right as you go through. So I hope you will all stop down and look at Hattie's Trail and see what's happening with Grandfather's House for the second part. It's right beside Hattie's Trail. So if you see an old house that's kind of sad, it's not going to be there any longer and show up a beautiful new structure. And did you tell me you're trying to incorporate some of the look of the original house from what you've been told, or you can't do that?
If I can get away with it, yes.
Go for
I
it.
have a couple of old black and white pictures
That would be very nice.
of the old house, of the original home. I have shown those to my architect, and we shall see.
Now, Dr. Mason, what would you like the community to know what your feelings are about this project and why you became involved?
The reason I became involved because I think it's delightful to preserve African American history, especially in Wicomico County. Again, as I said earlier, there's not that much available for us to enhance. And so this is a reason that when Deborah approached me and said, would you like to be on my board? I was like, sure, what can I do? And of course, I'm good at networking. And so I'm trying to bring in all the fraternal organizations, all the military components, American Legion, VFW posts, and all of them, to see if they can get involved.
So have you gone there and either of you gone, well, I know it's hard for you because you don't live here, but are you like an ambassador? Are you going to be going and giving talks at these places?
I'm going to bring Deborah.
I'm trying to get my board members to consider
That's important.
ordering some Buffalo Soldier clothing.
Regalia.
Regalia. And they can show up. It won't always have to be me.
Right. They can share their, no, that's important to get out there. And you've already know the group, the organizations, and often you just need to go there and give a talk to them when they have their meeting and tell them what's going on and ask for donations. One of the things we are doing in Salisbury, which is long overdue, is Preservation Trust, as part of our historic task force, is getting the sign at the courthouse for when Frederick Douglass spoke there. Many people in Salisbury do not know Frederick Douglass ever spoke at the courthouse or that he was born in Talbot County.
Well, I certainly knew he was born in Talbot County, but I did not know he spoke at the courthouse in Wicomico County.
Yes, in 1880.
In working with the group in Dorchester County for their Juneteenth, we know that he spoke there.
Yes, that's this.
I don't think anybody knows that.
No, and he actually spoke there to raise money to put a second story on the John Wesley Methodist Episcopalian Church, which is now the Charles Chipman Cultural Center, and that was also Black students studied there. At the time, I'm sure they were all boys because a lot of girls didn't get to go to school back then, but they needed more room. So that was the reason for his speech there, self-made man. And he, of course, was a self-made man. He was an incredible person. And we have an absolutely gorgeous sign planned for that area. So, we're still raising funds for that. They're expensive, but that will be an important part of Salisbury history. Interestingly enough, this was about, I think, the first place that Frederick Douglass experienced firsthand cruelty. his owner, probably his father, rented him out to the Eastern Shore to work in the fields. And he wasn't used to that kind of treatment, and I guess he knocked the guy down that was trying to punish him for something, and they sent him back home. But anyway, that's another story. But this is an important lost little piece of history, just as our Buffalo Soldiers site that no one knew about. So please come out and support her when you see anything. Preservation Trust also puts her events and things on our Facebook page. So please come out and support everything with the Buffalo Soldiers. And we're so excited that this is not going to be a lost piece of history, which it easily could have been with, your generation. It could have died with your generation. Yeah. So I'm just so excited that this is happening. And is there anything else either of you would like to say about the project or to the people?
I just really wish my mother and my uncle were still alive, because they just absolutely would not believe that this is being done.
Look what you've done.
This is being done. And grandfather took a leap of faith. I mean, it was 1882. He was 21 years old, illiterate, and from I don't know if it was Wicomico County yet, because he enlisted in 1882. Yeah, it was Wicomico County. Yes, it was. And somehow he got across the Chesapeake Bay, probably on a steamer, and enlisted in Baltimore. Unlike a lot of the United States colored troops who enlisted in Cambridge, I just recently found out, he enlisted in Baltimore. And from Baltimore, he was put on a train, most likely, and sent to Fort Riley, Kansas, because at that time, Fort Riley, Kansas was the hub for the military, particularly for soldiers coming from the East.
Oh, I'm sure he was all excited about the travel and getting to see different places.
Yes. I know how I feel when I visit a new place for the first time. But back 1882, and he didn't know how to read or write.
No, exactly.
All of a sudden, bam.
Yes.
It's like, can't imagine.
Well, I guess there were a lot of people couldn't read and write back then, too, but it still had to be difficult. Well, I'd like to thank you both for being here, and everybody, please watch for anything about the Buffalo Soldiers site and come out and support them, and let's make sure this piece of history is saved and preserved so that all of our children and grandchildren get to experience something they would never have thought they could experience on the Eastern Shore.
And one last thing from me, we are always looking for additional serious members to help us with this mission. So we could certainly use a secretary right now.
A secretary, and there will, once the museum is built, you will need people there to, be at the museum, because you don't want to open a place and then it's only they open once a month or once a week or something.
No.
So
No. And I will be taking training. I've already looked into that so that when it's time to hire a docent, I can train that person.
Yes.
I almost feel as though I need a second home down here.
Yes, you do.
I can't tell you how many times I've trekked through Delaware and down 13 South, but
it's kind of exhausting. Well, I admire you for all your hard work. I know what it's taken for you to get here, and but some things are really just so worth saving that it's what you want to do. You put your life into it. I put my life into preserving history, and that's what I do, and this is what I love, and it is important. It's not all about the newest building. That doesn't tell you what your fathers and grandfathers have done in this area. So everybody, again, I mentioned Preservation Trust of Wicomico. This is your go-to place for any questions on historical sites, buildings, anything. If you need a historic plaque for your home or your business, if it's a place that's old and it was important to the area, contact us on our Facebook page. And we are very happy to be out here, proud to be part of the project. A little bit we have done to help Deborah and all the group at the Buffalo Soldiers Living History Site. And thank you again for coming, and thank you for listening.